Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Dan File, and I'm a solutions architect with Megaport. And thanks for coming to the Tech Drop-In. We're going to talk a few minutes about who Megaport is and what we do. Then I'm going to jump into our portal and I'll do a small demo. And if you have any questions, please just put it in the chat box and we'll get to those later. So who is Megaport? Um, Megaport, we are a network as a service company that creates solutions quickly and privately to both clouds and potentially your other data centers that you have, in your ecosystem. Um, we are flexible on terms. So, from an operating expense standpoint, if you only need this for a couple of weeks, you can spin it up for a couple of weeks, or you could use. We have terms for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year terms. So it's really kind of could be a pay as you go type of service, and we're very flexible on creating, upgrading, moving your connections to whatever cloud service provider you need to. Um, Today we have pushing 3,000 customers in our network. We're a global company, so um, anybody from the big Major League Baseballs down to the small companies, we help them with their cloud journey. We're also data center agnostic, so we are in 100 plus data center operators with over 900 data centers on net in our ecosystem. So you can see, like, we're in digital realty. If you happen to be in there, you can connect to us. Or if you're in Equinix or Cyrus One, you name the data center operator, and we are probably in that data center. We also connect up to 360 plus cloud service providers. So not only the AWS and Google's, Oracles of the world, also if you're like in 8x8, or if you need to get to Bluebird Networks, we have connections with Bluebird Networks in Missouri, or you name it, we are probably connected to them. And if we're not connected to them, we can figure out a way to get connected to them. This is just a map showing our global presence. You can see all these dots with numbers in them. Those are how many top locations we have in that market. So if you're looking in Chicago, there, kind of in the middle, there's 23 different data centers that we're on net with. So this is our global backbone that's connected. It's a private global backbone. It doesn't touch the internet in any way, shape, or form. So when we're moving traffic from city to city or country to country, knowing it's going over a private dedicated Megaport backbone for security and for performance. Megaport is really easy to use. We kind of have two different models. We have our access layer, which is our ports, our Megaport cloud routers for routing between clouds or building a virtual cloud on our edge. Our Megaport Virtual Edge, which is a bring your own license model that can be a firewall, it can be a router, it can be an SD-WAN appliance, it can be an autonomous router, it can have internet for ingress to it. So from an access component, ports will typically sit in one of those 900 data centers that are enabled with Megaport equipment. MCRs are in the cloud, and then Megaport Virtual Edge is um, for where you have your SD-WAN type stuff. From there, now on the connectivity model, we start connecting what we call VXCs, virtual cross connects, like to the cloud, or in our marketplace where you can connect to different providers, or even like with our service key, where if you're two different companies but you need to make a connection together, one can create a service key and company B can then connect into that network. So very simple. I'm going to jump in the portal, show you how some of this works, but short term, long term, you choose the bandwidth, upgrade, downgrade, etc. This could be a deployment. I know there's a lot going on here and there's a whole lot on the screen, but at the end of the day, this is saying a customer that has data centers or multiple data centers that needs to connect to clouds and bring in some branch offices. You can use a combination of our, services like ports in the data centers or Megaport Virtual Edge to connect into branch centers, and then get to any of the 800 plus data centers or cloud service providers that you need to get to globally. It's cost effective, it's flexible, it's scalable. We're modular in design, so you just kind of keep building on top. Or if you need to lift and shift, you can delete pieces of our network and rebuild it on demand and globally across the whole globe. This is kind of a simple, what does it look like from a global WAN topology? So you can see here we have M MCRs, we have ports, we have MBEs. We're connecting, North America to EMEA and APAC. So this modular design, and this is just a design, but can be built however you need to accommodate your global infrastructure. From there, I'm going to go into the portal here. This is a demo portal, so there's a lot of stuff in it. But the nice thing is this is actually, even though it's a demo shell, it's using our production services, right? So when I click on build a port or something like that, it's going to create a port that's actually in production in one of our data centers. And then I'm going to build a connection to the cloud, um, to AWS, and maybe I'll build one to Azure. Just the simplicity show how easy it is to create a port and make these connections to the clouds. We also have, you can create our Megaport cloud routers here, which I won't get into today. Um, it's still easy to do. It just takes a couple of minutes for IP addresses and BGP convergence and stuff like that. And then, of course, this is where I'd also create my Megaport Virtual Edge. I'll just go in here real quick to show you if I wanted to put an edge in Denver, let's say, you can see the different platforms that we support. We support Aruba, Aviatrix, a Cisco Autonomous 8000V, the Secure Firewall Threat Defense, FortiGate, Palo Alto. We're working on Meraki. It's not in production yet. VMware, Versa. So bring your own license model. We have a lot of different platforms we can support, and we're always expanding this portfolio. So if there's a specific need, reach out to one of your Megaport sales executives and say, I need to have XYZ platform. Is that something you can accommodate? And our engineering teams will look at that. Megaport cloud routers, really, it's think about a router that sits in your data center, except you're just moving it out to the edge. This is nice when you're trying to say you have workloads in AWS Ashburn and you also have Azure Ashburn, but your data center might be in Indianapolis, right? There's a lot of latency from a hairpinning standpoint of view. You can drop this MCR directly in Ashburn, Virginia, or the Washington, D.C. area. And now the latency between AWS and Ashburn becomes sub 5 milliseconds, and then you have a tail back to your Indianapolis data center. So we've got different videos on that and information on our megaport.com page. But today we're going to just kind of go through ports and some standard connections. So like I said, creating a port is very easy. You get this page here, and you can see we have all of our data centers listed here across the globe. You can do one of two things. You can filter by country. So if I wanted to be in the United States, I would just do there, and it kind of filters down all those in the United States. Or I can just filter by a provider. Let's say I'm in data bank. So you can see all the different data bank locations here that we support. And today I'm just going to play with Iron Mountain. So I'm going to choose Iron Mountain and Ashburn here. And I'm going to click next. Now, the first thing you're going to see is your port speed. So we support 1 gig, which is kind of legacy. We're getting away from those because nobody wants 1 gig. So we still do have those in our network at some of our locations. 10 gig ports and 100 gig ports. So these are physical ports like you would have on your router or your switch, right? And then what's going to happen is if I choose 10 gig, you're then going to take, when this creates the port and you're going to get an LOA, you're going to go to that data center provider and get a piece of glass or a cross connect from your cage to the Megaport port. We're going to name this as Dan P Demo Port. You can see here, this is a choice for public or private. So a private port means that only you can see this, or anybody in your company can see this port. If you wanted to make this public, that means it would be on the Megaport marketplace, and anybody that's a Megaport customer can connect to you. Now, if you're a data center operator or some kind of cloud service provider, you might want to have this public. But if you're a regular private company, then you want to keep these private. Service level reference. This is not needed. It's kind of a free text form. Let's say this was for a migration to project X. I mean, I can name it, or if this was a specific customer or whatever, you could put this in here and it would come out on your bill. Here's our flexible terms. 1 month means it's month to month. You can see the different pricing if you lock in at 12 months, 24 months, or 36 months. I'm just going to choose 1 month since this is a demo. We also have port diversity options. I can create a diverse pair. Now, what that means is in most of our data centers, we have different equipment, 2 sets of equipment. We'll have what we call a red zone and a blue zone. They're 2 physical network gear separated from each other. They're on different power racks, different racks, maybe different power supplies, definitely different power supplies, but different electrical panels within that data center. So if you've ever been a data center and you get an A and B feed out of different power panels off different UPSs, that's what basically you're creating here. So you can create a demo port 1 and a demo port 2. I'm not going to create that today. And then the other thing is we can enable lag. So you can do a lag port up to 8 of them. What this is going to do is create a 80 gig port, basically a lagged port, so that you can have multiple services if you need more than a 10 gig. Again, we're not going to create that either. So this is just kind of a summary. I want to build a port. I've named it DNP Demo Port. I'm not doing any lag. It's 10 gig. I built it on a month to month, and I'm going to go and add this port. Now, this really hasn't been ordered yet. What it does is puts it into a shopping cart over here. And I can build out all of my services and then order everything at one time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to order this so I can get this starting to be deployed. It's going to ask me for verification that this is what you want to deploy. I'm going to order it now. And then in about 45 to 60 seconds, I'm going to have an LOA that I can give to Iron Mountain here, right? So this is starting to deploy. While this is waiting, I told you I have my AWS console up here. I also have my Microsoft console up here. I created a Microsoft Express Route service key. So we can start deploying these services within Megaport. Now, keep in mind that this is not going to have a connection to my router, so these services aren't going to come up and I'm not going to be able to show you BGP until I got a piece of glass into my routers in my data center and stuff like that. But I'm trying to show the easiness of how to use this portal here. So the first thing we're do is we're going to go to AWS. So you can see here that we have 42 hosted VIF ports and 106 hosted Connect ports. I'm not going to go into this with what the difference is between hosted VIF and hosted connections. If you want to order some services, you can let your sales executive know. We can go, through what the differences are. But for the ease of this demo, I'm just going to choose a hosted VIF, and I'm going to sort to my country. I'm going to go down to USA, and I'm going to want to go in Foresight Reston. This is going to ask me what I want to make my connection name. So I'm going to say Dan P Demo AWS. Again, I could name this whatever I want to. Let's just make this 50 meg since this is a demo. I can enable or shut down the virtual cross connect. If I had a specific VLAN that I wanted to use with AWS, I can put this in here. Typically, since you don't know what VLANs are used on the NNI, and it doesn't really matter within our environment, we leave this untagged. And again, you can see I get my different pricing options: monthly, 12 months, 24 months, 36 months. I'm going to choose the monthly term. I'm going to use this as a private connection. So this is going to be a private VIF or a transit gateway. I'm going to put in my AWS account ID. And let's say the data center, my data center ASN is 65010. If I wanted to put in a BGP authorization key, I could do so here. Otherwise, AWS will generate one. And if I wanted to use specific IP addresses, I could put those in here. Otherwise, AWS will generate them for us. I'm going to click on next. I get a summary. I get the cost, and I'm going to add this VXC. Then I'm going to go in and order this. And then we'll go up and see how we're doing on our LOA. All right, so we're starting to be deployed here. Now you can see that I have an LOA that I'm ready to just click on this. It's going to show me that, it's issued by Megaport. It's in Iron Mountain Ashburn. Here's the service ID of the Megaport port. And here is the port ID that Iron Mountain needs to connect to us. So pretty simple, pretty instant, within a minute with the document was generated. And you just give this over and it'll take Iron Mountain, whatever their SLA is, 24, 48 hours to get this cross connected into your cage. So now we know that this is coming up, and quite honestly, since we know we don't have a connection in a router here, that this is never going to come out. But let's go ahead and build a connection to Azure. So again, I just go in here, I create a connection. I want to go to the cloud. I'm going to go to Microsoft Azure. And with Microsoft Azure, you have to start in Azure because you need a express route service key. So whereas you saw with AWS, all I needed to do was put in my account number. Azure's different, along with Oracle and Google, where you create your Fast Connect or your OCID, whatever, in the cloud service provider portal. I have that right here. I'm going to copy that to the clipboard. And I'm going to drop that key in here. So our APIs are running to validate this key with Microsoft. And now it comes back and it says, okay, you have an express route service key. You have a primary and secondary connection available to you. It's really just as simple as clicking on this one, and then I would redo it if I wanted to build the secondary, or if I wanted to build another port in another data center that could also be used for the secondary. It comes up and says, name this connection. So this is Dan P Demo Azure, 50 meg. I'm going to let it auto assign to VLAN. Same thing. We're going to go with a monthly term. This here, if you haven't been in Azure, you have a single VLAN that you set up in Azure. Um, Typically, you can use Q and Q, but we can do all that translation for you in our Megaport portal. I'm not going to assign the VLAN yet because I just want to make the express route come up. But this is where, if you know what VLAN you're going to assign in Azure, you can do that here. And then here's my cloud details, my express route service key, and I'm going to add this VXC. So now you can see that I have, let me order this. I have 2 connections starting to be spun up. I'm going to go into my AWS screen. You can see here, now here's my virtual connection that I built. I'm going to go in and I'm going to accept this. I'm going to put it to one of my DX gateways. And now this will feed the information back to the Megaport portal with the IP addresses, the ASN, and of course, Azure 64513. Here is my BGP auth key will be shown to me in the Megaport portal. It takes about a minute or so for that to come back. But if I go into my cog wheel and go through the screens, you can see here's my BGP auth key that was assigned, and here's my IP addresses that were fed to me from AWS. Azure, let's go look at my Azure. I don't have these guys provisioned yet. It's still running. But again, now I have, with this demo, I have a single port sitting in Iron Mountain. I have a connection to AWS. I have a connection to Azure, and all my routing's being done by my router in the Iron Mountain data center. This would be a good place where you could also put a cloud router. I wanted to make this easy, but if this data center, like I said, happened to be in Indianapolis, we would put a Megaport cloud router similar to this guy here, and then have this one's in Melbourne, but you would have a connection to AWS and a connection to Azure, and then maybe a connection back to your port. So, is there any questions that we see in the demo or in the chat?
No, Dan, no questions.
Okay. I think this is about it for my demo. Please feel free to reach out to your Megaport sales executive in your area. Visit megaport.com and docs.megaport.com to learn more about our Megaport services. I thank you for joining today. Hopefully this was helpful. And please let us know how we can help you and your company with regards to your cloud journey. Have a great weekend.